Yes.
Or did I ask that already?
Yesterday was full of flowers.
Where'd you go that you saw full of flowers?
I went Friday afternoon to the Lake Junaluska plant sale and picked up some plants for my patio, and then wanted to continue filling it, so I ended up going to Home Depot as well. And yeah, there's a lot of flowers in our weekend.
That's good.
Oh yeah.
I've planted several rhododendrons in the last few days at my house in Robbinsville, so fun times.
You come all the way from Robbinsville?
I have a house up here and I have a house in Robbinsville.
Wow. I'm impressed.
So I spend a lot of time in Robbinsville.
And Amy can't be in
Well,
I just wanted,
I think that's a woman thing. That's not a man thing. That's a woman thing.
Hold on. I am always on.
All right, let me try this again. No, there's a certain women thing. How's that sound? All right.
Thank you.
So in Revelation chapter 2 again this morning, this is an easy lesson because there's only 4 verses in dealing with this church that we're going to look at this morning. Revelation chapter 2, we're going to be looking at verses 8 through 11. All right, and it says, "And unto the angel of the church in Smyrna write, These things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews, and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give unto thee a crown of life. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death." Interesting verses. Anybody know anything about the church of Smyrna? According to the
According to what I read, it sounded like they were a church of poverty.
they were a church of poverty. Exactly right. They were called the persecuted church. And it covers a time period from 200 AD to around 325 AD. The word Smyrna means bitter or myrrh, and myrrh is an ointment associated with death. I'm going to give you a little background about the city of Smyrna. Ancient Smyrna was a premier and wealthy city on the Aegean coast. It was known as the glory of Asia for its extraordinary beauty, its planned streets, and its strategic harbor. It had a vibrant trade center, Hellenistic culture, and it was devoted to Rome. Smyrna had golden streets connecting the temple of Zeus to the temple of Cybele, the mother of the gods. As I said, Smyrna was a rich city. Trade flowed through Smyrna because of its location by land and by sea. And it had a rich trade in wines. We also know from the history of that Smyrna was a city deeply committed to idolatry and the worship of the Roman emperor. As I said, they had golden streets beginning at the temple of Zeus and went all the way to the temple of Cybele. And you had temples like to Apollo and Asclepius and Aphrodite. And they worshiped these old gods, but that worship to the old gods was dying out, and the new focus was coming to actually Rome and then to the emperors of Rome.
I do have a question.
Yeah, buddy.
Okay, I understood just about everything except for when it was talking about the 10 days. What does it mean when they shall have tribulation for 10 days?
Okay, I am going to go through that here in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay? I have that on my list of points to bring out this morning, so we will look at that here shortly. In our study in chapter 1 of Revelations, John was exiled to Patmos because, do you remember what the emperor exiled him to Patmos? Domitian. And Domitian fancied himself a god. And John refused to worship Domitian, and that's probably why he ended up in Patmos. In 96 BC, Smyrna built the first temple to Dea Roma, the goddess of Rome. This was the spiritual symbol of the Roman Empire. From there, it wasn't much of a move to begin the worship of the dead emperors. Then from just a short step from there, they started worshiping the living ones. In 23 AD, Smyrna built the first temple for the worship of the Emperor Tiberius Caesar. Smyrna was the lead city in the cult worship of the Roman emperors. Domitian took it a step further and demanded that they call him Lord from the people as a sign of loyalty. As I said, I wonder if this is why John was exiled. I have a feeling it was. Emperor worship had begun as a spontaneous demonstration of gratitude to Rome. But toward the end of the first century, in the days of Domitian, the final step was taken and Caesar worship became compulsory. Once a year, the Roman citizen must burn a pinch of incense on an altar to the godhead of Caesar. Once the citizen had done that, they were given a certificate to guarantee that they performed their religious duty. Barclay said this, of all the Christians had to do was to burn a pinch of incense, say Caesar is Lord, receive the certificate, and go about their way and worship whomever they pleased. But that is precisely what they did not do. The Christians didn't do that. They would give no man the name of Lord. That name was only to be kept for Jesus Christ and Him alone. They would not formally conform to emperor worship. Whatever happened to the city of Smyrna? Any guesses?
I'm guessing it ain't there no more.
It was until 1922, and evidently it was taken over, and the name of Smyrna was changed to Izmir in 1922, and it's still around today. The city was founded around the 11th century BC, so that city's over 3,000 years old. All right, that's a little bit of the history of Smyrna. Let's get into the scriptures. Verse 8, and to the angel of the church of Smyrna write, these things saith the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. We know from that, Christ has given his titles and his bona fides here. We went over most of that in chapter 1. Do we need to discuss that any further? All right, then let's move on to verse number 9. I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews, and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. The church of Smyrna wasn't having an easy time. The Christians at Smyrna were suffering persecution because they refused to compromise their faith. Larkin said this, we see the meaning of the word, a prophecy of persecution and death, which was to befall the members of the church of Smyrna. The church was experiencing hardship. Like I said, Smyrna was a rich city, but the Christians were poor. The word poverty was used in the verse, and every writer I looked at, they said that word poverty, if you study it out, it talked about abject poverty, meaning that those Christians owned nothing. These early Christians were robbed and plundered blind. They were fired from their jobs. This economic persecution was one of the reasons that they were poor. Yet they joyfully accepted the plunder of their goods and possessions and didn't say a word. I'd be a little upset. I'm just honest. I'd be a little upset. If you look at Hebrews 10:34, Hebrews 10:34 says this, for ye had compassion of me in my bonds, and took joyfully the spoiling of your goods, knowing in yourselves that ye have in heaven a better and enduring substance. That don't sound right. Yeah, that's right. I wonder if they took that verse, they knew they're going to be robbed. And yet, even though that they're going to have these persecutions and these sufferings, they joyfully accepted it because they knew that their treasures down here didn't matter, but the real treasure was what they were laying up for themselves in heaven. Interesting, here in my Bible, the words, but thou art rich, are in parentheses. Is that how it is in your Bible?
Yes.
It is interesting to note that the church of Smyrna claimed to be poor, but God said they were rich. It's total opposite of how he described our church age, the Laodicean church age. If you look at Revelations 3:17, it said, because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods and have need of nothing, and knowest not thou art wretched, miserable, and poor, blind, and naked. The Laodicean church age claims to be rich. Good morning.
It's been one of them mornings. It's been one of them weeks.
Uh-oh.
So, I got my tough skin on. Go ahead.
You got your what on?
Tough skin.
Well, good. We're in Revelations 2:8-11. So I got to thinking about that, you know. The Laodicean church age is wealthy. I mean, we have everything imaginable. Fine homes, fine fancy cars, which I know a lot of that stuff did not exist back then. But we are more focused on materialistic things than we are spiritual things, whereas the church in Smyrna was more focused on spiritual things versus material things. And God says that because of that, we're poor, but they were rich. The church of Smyrna is a witnessing, martyred church. They went into the Colosseums and became food for lions and sports attractions for the crowds. This is a church that was tied to the stake and soaked in tar and burned. They were trussed up in sacks. Those sacks were filled with rattlesnakes. I'm not a fan of snakes. I don't know about the rest of you. I would not be happy about being tied up in a sack with a bunch of them.
No.
And once they were in those sacks, they'd be thrown into the river. How many of you have ever heard the book, The Fox's Book of Martyrs? This book gives a detailed account of what happened to the church of Smyrna and what they went through. One of the writers I was reading from said every Christian household should have a copy. And I started to bring mine this morning, and I ran out the door and forgot it. But that same writer said that there was 4 books that every Christian household should have. He said the first, of course, was the King James Bible. The second one was a Young's Concordance. I think I have a Young's Concordance. I don't ever use it. I use a Strong's or a Cruden's. He said the third book that a Christian household should have in their library is Reverend Clarence Larkin's book on dispensational truth. That's got that guy that did all these drawings right here. And finally, a copy of the Fox Book of Martyrs. It's an interesting book. It's definitely worth reading. The last part of verse 9 says, I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. I had some trouble with this last part of this verse. We know that God's chosen people are the Jews. And in Smyrna, there was a large Jewish community thriving. And history tells us that this Jewish community was hostile toward these early Christians.
Oh, yeah.
Add to the fact that these early Christians were also being persecuted and abused by the pagans in Smyrna. They were having a rough time of it, as I've said. We have a group of people that claim to be Jews and were not. And some of these that claim to be Jews and weren't, they thought that they were going to replace the true Jews and replace Israel. What is a true Jew? Before you say somebody that's born Jewish, after reading Romans 2:17 through 29, yes, a person that is born to a Jew is a true Jew, but according to the scriptures, it's a little different. You have those that are born Jews and do all those religious traditions, but they're in Romans 2:17 through 29, it talks about a spiritual Jew, and that's what it's talking about here in these scriptures, about saying they're a Jew and they're not, but of the synagogue of Satan.
So how do you get the Messianic Jew out of all of that?
Well, you want to read Romans 2:17 through 29? It says, Behold, thou art a Jew, and restest in the law, and makest thy boast of God, and knowest his will, and approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law, and art confident that thou thyself art a guide of the blind, a light of them which are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes, which has the form of knowledge and of the truth of the law.
What chapter?
2. I'm at verse 21. Thou therefore which teachest another, teachest thou not thyself? Thou that preachest a man should not steal, dost thou steal? Thou that sayest a man should not commit adultery, dost thou commit adultery? Thou that abhorrest idols, dost thou commit sacrilege? Thou that makest thy boast of the law, through breaking of the law, dishonoreth thou God? For the name of God is blasphemy among the Gentiles through you, as it is written. For circumcision verily profiteth if thou keep the law. But if thou be a breaker of the law, thy circumcision is made uncircumcision. Therefore, if the uncircumcision keepeth the righteousness of the law, shall not his uncircumcision be counted for circumcision? And shall not uncircumcision, which is by nature, if it fulfill the law, judge thee, who by the letter and circumcision does transgress the law? For he is not a Jew which is one outwardly, meaning that he was born into that group of people. Neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew which is one inwardly, meaning spiritual. And the circumcision which thou art of heart, and the circumcisions which thou of the heart in the spirit and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men but of God.
Still kind of clear as
Well, there's
thin mud.
Yeah. Well, there are Jews. We know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're currently blind, correct?
Yes.
But then there's spiritual Jews.
Yes.
Those have been saved, born again.
Yeah.
And I've always heard those called Messianic Jews to differentiate.
Well, that's the same thing. Any other questions on that? That was a tough one to.
Well, I could definitely give you questions on that. But
I know. I know you could.
Well, because yeah,
I got it.
I have lots that needs clarity.
And like I've always said, there's some questions I'm not gonna be able to answer, and there's some questions that nobody will be able to answer till we get
Well,
to
I know
heaven.
that. I know that.
I know, that's why I'm reminding you of it. Alright, so a true Jew is not one physically or racially, but spiritually. Let's move to verse 10. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Behold, be thou faithful unto death, and I will give unto thee a crown of life. Larkin said this: they were told not to fear the things that they should be called to suffer, but to be faithful unto death. Yes?
Was the Church of Smyrna during Nero?
No. 200 AD to 325. Wait a minute. That's not right. Yes, that's right. We're going to get down to that here in a minute.
Okay.
But Nero's going to be mentioned here in just a minute.
Well, I was asking because that was one of his favorite things to do, was to cover them in tar and pitch and use them to light the games.
Yeah, buddy. So, Larkin said, they were told to be thou faithful unto death, not until death. Don't be afraid. I don't know about the rest of the audience, but that is hard to do sometimes. I'm sure everybody in here has a fear of something. These early Christians were facing things that we can't even imagine. Can you imagine the fear and stress that they were under and the suffering that they went through? Jesus knew what they were facing, and he wanted them to stand against those things and be not afraid of what was to come, because they had a promise of something greater if they endured. And we all know that the devil hates Christians. He despises those Christians that are sold out and living for God. He does. Those people who will not compromise their faith and their walk with God, the devil hates them with a passion. The church of Smyrna was a church full of Christians that the devil hated most. And he went out of his way to make them suffer, according to verse 10 that we just read. He's thrown some of them in prison. And we're living in a day that there are some Christians who are suffering, not like what the Smyrna church did, but they suffer things that we don't know. And then we have a lot of saved people that warm the pew. The devil never bothers them.
It's because they're not a threat.
Because they're not a threat. That's exactly right. That's the church age we're living in. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not. Honestly, I'm not. But if you contrast Smyrna and Laodicea, they're total opposites. You know, like I said a few moments ago, they were poor and in poverty and suffered tribulation, but God said that they were rich. And Laodicea, we claim to be rich and have need of nothing, and God said that we were wretched, blind, naked, and poor. And the thing being, as I said earlier, Smyrna, the church of Smyrna, was more interested in the spiritual things than the worldly material things. And our church age is more interested in material things than we are spiritual things. We got those turned around. Ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Anybody got an idea on what that means? I'm going to answer your question here in just a second. Now this can just be a simple 10-day time period. But from what I read, I think it encompasses more than just 10 simple days.
It's never that simple.
It's never that simple, that's right. From what I read, this portion of this verse has been long debated. of what those 10 days mean. Larkin put it like this: they were told that the author of their suffering would be the devil, and its duration would be 10 days, which was doubtlessly the prophetic reference to the 10 great persecutions under the Roman emperors beginning with Nero in 64 AD and ending with Diocletian in AD 310. 7 of these great persecutions occurred during the Church of Smyrna period of church history. And Larkin went on to say, or it may refer to the 10 years of the last and fiercest persecution under Diocletian. White said this: others think that Jesus really meant persecution over the reign of the 10 Roman emperors. And Nero began it, and there were 8 between him and Diocletian. So there was those 10 Roman emperors really done a job on the early Christians.
So in other words, it was like 10 people, 10 types of tribulation.
Yep. Something like that. Yep. And Diocletian being the worst.
Was. I have a question.
All right.
Kind of off topic, but sort of going together. Do you think, because this is a nitpicky point between me and Mama, every time somebody does something bad, Mama says, he's just full of the devil.
Okay.
He's got to be demon possessed.
Okay.
Do you think that everybody that does something that evil, because you read back, you've studied the way that these emperors were, and Rome was very, very evil.
It was.
Do you believe that they had to be possessed by Satan to be that way, or could they just have been evil men?
So let's just take the devil completely out of the scenario. What are we?
We're human.
We're human beings, and we are evil.
Yeah.
Without God, we're evil.
We're evil.
That's the way I see it.
Now then, let's bring the devil back into the scenario. We're already evil and wicked. He can just give us
Temptation or anything.
do it like this, do it like this. You know.
See, okay, because I've always felt like the devil just gets too much credit.
Well, he gets a lot of credit that he's not due. You're exactly right. But I think that if there's a person that he can use to make his job easier, and that person is just the right person to do that job, he'll whisper in their ear, this is how you want to do it. Nobody's going to say anything. Just do it like this. Think about Hitler.
Well, I look at it this way. You've got the maniac Gudera, who was definitely possessed
By legion.
by a legion. But he was possessed.
Yeah,
And he could not control himself.
this is true.
Okay.
But he didn't harm anybody, I don't think.
No.
He just harmed himself.
But he couldn't control what he did.
Did you control a legion of demons?
Okay. And the Bible calls Satan a tempter.
He is.
And to me, that's how I look at it. You've got these people who do these evil, evil things.
We
And it's
already
not-
have it in our nature
Yeah.
to be bad.
And
Yeah.
that, okay. So
And-
I'm not
and
the only one
and the
that
devil can
looks
take
at it
that
way.
and magnify it 1,000
Okay.
times.
Well, and in a way
Yeah.
too, I mean, the devil's the reason we are evil by nature.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
I mean, I have a friend that a few years ago killed his brother, and he had with a sword collection that he had, and I mean, he's in prison for life at this point, but at one point, he actually asked the Lord into his heart. But I mean, to this day, he can't remember what he did. And I mean, I've always been under the impression that maybe Satan got a hold of him. I mean, because, to talk to him, you see him as just a regular person. But when somebody is, when Satan gets a hold of somebody, there's a whole bunch of damage that can be
Oh,
done.
yeah. Well, I've read and studied evil.
After the flood, God said that he wouldn't destroy the earth again because man's heart was evil continually.
Yeah.
And see, it's like the big thing that brought all this up between me and Mama was when Monica was killed. My stepsister. And with the way that Rick murdered her. And I tried to explain to Mama. Mama's like, he was just demon possessed. He was just demon possessed.
Well, that's not, she's not.
He had to be demon possessed to do what he did. I said, no, Mama, he didn't. I said, he had to be evil.
Yeah.
Is what he had to be.
Yeah.
I said, Satan may have tempted him and put those thoughts in his mind.
Yep.
I said,
But he had to act upon them.
he made that choice. He didn't have, you can't say Satan forced him to do it, that he had a demon make him do that. And that was why I was asking what your opinion was, having studied, because
Well, Satan can only be in one place at one time.
yes,
Yeah.
But he has legions of
there's
demons
demons.
at
There's
at his
demons everywhere.
disposal. And
but you don't hear a whole lot.
Satan knows how to manipulate us. Let's finish the last part of verse 10 and 11, and then we'll get to
Okay.
the third church.
I'm sorry we got off on that, but you don't hear a whole lot about it, and sometimes I think it needs clarification.
All right, the last part of verse 10, you're right, it does. The last part of verse 10 is, be thou faithful unto death, and I will give unto thee a crown of life. A crown of life. Larkin said the church of Smyrna was promised a crown of life. They were not to recant when called upon to face a martyr's death, but remain faithful unto death, until death relieved them of their suffering. What is the crown of life?
Crown of life is what you get in heaven. It is a reward.
It is a reward, that's right. It does not, the crown of life is not a promise of eternal life. They're two totally different things. Crown of life is a reward. It's also called the martyr's crown or the winner's crown. Athletes contest in the games would win a crown called the winner's crown. The crown of life, like I said, is not promised. It is not promised to somebody who gets saved. Some people believe that the crown of life bestows eternal life. That's not what it does. The passage does not say that if you are faithful unto death that you will receive eternal life. The statement is that if you are faithful unto death, you will receive a crown of life. The crown, of course, is a reward. These crowns are rewards given at the judgment seat of Christ. While the tribulation is taking place down here on earth, the judgment seat of Christ will be taking place up in heaven. This is where the Christian will be rewarded and receive these crowns. Anybody know how many crowns there are that you could possibly obtain?
I heard that long ago. It's been a long
First
time.
one is the crown of life. And you can find it in the scriptures that we read this morning, or James chapter 1 and verse 12. The second one is the crown of glory. You can find it in 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 4. The third is the crown of rejoicing. You can find it in 1 Thessalonians 2 and 19. The fourth one is the incorruptible crown. You can find it in 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 25. And last but not least is the crown of righteousness, which can be found in 2 Timothy 4 and 8. We won't go into those verses. All right, the last verse, verse 11. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. He that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. So we know that he's talking to the local church. And we also know that he's talking to all the churches of that time period, all the churches of that church age, even to the church today. He that hath an ear, that's all inclusive. That's everybody. Should be able to hear it. A saved, born again child of God doesn't have to fear the second death. Is that correct?
Right.
All right. Because we're already overcomers, according to 1 John 4 and 4 and 1 John 5 and 4. For sake of time, we won't read those. What is the second death?
It's the death where they're thrown into the lake of fire.
That's exactly right. Barclay said this. Barclay said the second death was a Jewish rabbinic expression for the total extinction of the utterly wicked. The second death is defined as the lake of fire, a final eternal judgment for the unredeemed after physical death. It is the absolute eternal separation from God. We won't look at the verses, but you can find the second death mentioned in Revelations 20 and 6, 20, 14 and 15, and 21 and 8. All right, that ends the church of Smyrna. Next week, we will be looking at the church of Pergamos, starting in verse 12. If you'll turn that off, please, sir.